Hey y'all, so today I want to share my testimony on how I came to know Christ as my Lord and Savior. You're gonna have to excuse me because this is my first time making a long YouTube video. I'm a little camera shy and I didn't prepare. So I think the best place to start is childhood. I came from a pretty broken family, pretty broken home. We had believers, influencing some of my family's morals, namely my mother's. But before that, she had a type, a very over macho, violent, bad boy type. And so I had to grow up with a abusive, alcoholic, womanizing stepdad who, when I was like 9 years old, gave me my first drink for the sake of me keeping my mouth shut while my mom was in the hospital so that he could sleep around pretty much. And I didn't keep up my end of the bargain. I ended up telling my mother. That spawned a whole big thing. I'd already been getting physically beat by him, but this spawned a really bad beating. So the reason I mention this is because if one knows, trauma, violence, all types of things, not only do they lead to mental issues later on, but if you look at it through a spiritual lens, it could open you up to demonic influence, which I definitely had for a majority of my life. And so I'm gonna fast forward a lot of things. Don't want to just keep talking about the negatives of life. Most of my life was negative, in my mind and my actions. So that's gonna be hard to do, not to talk about a lot of negativity. But I promise you, after I get to the part to where I came to know Christ, there will be positivity. But for now, there's gonna be a lot of negativity. So I had to be put into counseling. They had counselors, or you could call them psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever you want to call them, come and visit me at school, from the ages of 13 till I was a legal adult, and it was kind of embarrassing because they pulled me out of class and sent me to the office, and some kids who were already in the office would see that I had to go sit down and talk with counselors, so people already thought I was nuts. Rumors would always spread that I was just mentally ill, mentally unhinged, and I would kind of confirm them with my actions too, because I had a lot of anger, a lot of hatred, a lot of anxiety, a lot of avoidance of people. The only people that I got along with were also other people from broken homes and who had an early history of addiction. I'd been using drugs pretty much since the age of like 13, 14, which sadly is a pretty common story for a lot of people in this generation. And, it started out with marijuana, some of my friends Adderall. By the time it was freshman year of high school, upgraded to drinking and doing pain pills, not doing the super strong ones, but popping pain pills here and there, even combining them with alcohol. On Halloween in my freshman year in high school, my mom found me in the middle of the road while she was driving, not because I called her or anybody called her. She was just happened to be driving and found me in the middle of the road, the middle of a main road, just walking aimlessly because I'd popped pain pills and drank, and I was blacked out completely. And when she took me home, I threw up everywhere, and that was luck. At that point in time, my mom was a believer. I'm sure she prayed over me all the time, and despite all I was doing and all the dumb stuff, I'm certain that not only God's plan but her prayers are the reason I'm still here today. And anyways, so Fast forward to like 16, 17, man, I start doing crack, not as like a habit, but like every once in a while, just because I'm bored. By that time I'd already had stupid things go down at school where I'd get in trouble or I'd get into altercations, and then by that point, with my close group of friends, I'd already, it's high school, so a lot of people drink, but I'm talking about day drinking, skipping school to drink, having the people I was around. Our only social activity that connected us, not even personality, most of the time we didn't even really like each other, was the fact that we got high all the time. And our parents, my mom, because she worked all the time and she couldn't be around, she couldn't really keep track of me, and there was no man in the house, so I could always sneak off and do pretty much whatever I wanted. And even though she tried to control me, and tell me right from wrong and show me the things of God, I didn't want to listen. She tried, but I'd always slip away. And if she did try to punish me, man, I had more strength. I could kind of keep her off of me, run off, and she just couldn't control me. So I'd hang out with other kids whose parents either couldn't control them or just plain flat out did not care. We would get high, drunk all the time, have girls from our school over, be out at all hours of the night, not show up to school, not do anything positive or productive. And this is before our brains were fully developed, man. And to this day, man, a lot of them continue in that same path, or are mentally broken, haven't come to know the truth, sadly. I feel like they could be delivered from a lot of their difficulties. But anyways, so progressing further down the line, I'm 21, almost 22. Actually, before I was 21, around 20-ish or whatever. I started to like doing cocaine, and saw people hanging out here and there that like to do it too. And I grew up a partier, and mischief, stole the occasional car with my friends, but never for any profit, never on any kind of gangster type of stuff, maybe car hopped, got into a few fights, but I never was a career criminal, cold-blooded type of person. It was just more so, being stupid and high and thrill-seeking. But the time I was 20, I really started liking cocaine. And so I started buying often. And eventually I started realizing that people like to buy. It's known, people like to buy it, but that selling it pretty much sells itself, man. The key is being, and I'm saying from a worldly perspective, if that's your thing, the key is, being disciplined. If you're selling, I wasn't disciplined. I enjoyed getting high on my own stuff. I was a very bad dealer, like in the sense that I did not know what I was doing and I wasn't doing it well. But it afforded me enough money to continue using it and buying more and selling more. So I start doing it very often, and then at some point the cocaine just starts being not enough, so I start doing meth. Like, as in, I didn't just start doing meth, I should say, but I slowly, I started buying because someone I knew through that whole lifestyle knew about meth. And I was always constantly seeking higher thrills, higher sensations, whether it be through drugs or sexual experiences, which that's another facet of this that I'm going to speak on, but right now I'm talking about the drugs. And I would do, from the moment I found meth, man, it was sad to say, it felt like the answer. I was able to work nonstop, not need breaks, not need to eat. I dropped a lot of excess weight. You know, initially it had me, well, I thought that I looked better, you know, it gave me more confidence, but also slimming down. I was real cut because I wasn't eating, and you know, I hadn't yet eaten away at my muscles at that time, so I was getting real cut. It gave me an insane amount of self-confidence to the point of thinking myself to be a god himself. Fearlessness, bold approach to everything, insane amounts of energy, not needing to sleep, not needing to eat, not even needing to use the bathroom because I wasn't sleeping or eating. Able to work long hours and still be able to go out and, you know, if I hooked up with someone, able to have sex nonstop. So I started just neglecting sleep and eating and all types of things. I was not living like a human being, if I'm being honest. And looking back, I know that all drugs, but especially methamphetamine, has a very, for lack of a better word, demonic kind of energy to it. And well, I kept doing it, and at first it was fine. Like, you know, it made me believe that all these people have been lying to me, man. Like this meth stuff, man, my teeth aren't falling out. You know, I'm not insane yet. You know, I'm getting so much done. I'm so confident. Like I feel great. You know, when does the bad stuff kick in? And it's cheap, man. It's cheap. It was so much cheaper than cocaine. So it's like, when does all this bad stuff kick in that I'm being told about? You know, wow, everybody's lied to me about everything, including this. So I keep doing it. And lo and behold, you know, situations line up to where this girl that I'd been hooking up with in the past, you know, she'd been back in town. She had been in rehab for a while. She reached out because I think in a moment of weakness she wanted to party, and she knew I was in the area. So I had stuff, but I had just recently been fired too, because just my behavior, you know, after a long enough time of just blowing off work just to have sex while on methamphetamine, or even just masturbate while on meth, or you know, just the plain simple act of just doing methamphetamine, you know, became more important than anything in life. Talking to anyone, going to work, eating, sleeping, doing anything. That the sex and methamphetamine became my reason to exist. And so yeah, so safe to say I eventually got fired. Well, this is the point in time where everything just starts happening a lot faster, as in my demise after being fired. Because now that I'm fired because of my actions, I have no structure. I have no reason to even try to hold on to regular everyday human life. This allowed me to go completely off the rails. And well, so anyways, she comes by, and you know, we're hooking up, doing meth. I pretend that I'm running low. You know, I had my little separate amount, and then I had stuff that I was sharing. It was a completely transactional kind of like relationship. Like, yeah, we chilled. I didn't pay her any money or nothing, but she knew the drill. She comes over, we get real high. We have what back then I called a real good time for days and days with each other, you know. And yeah, so at some point, you know, we've just fornicated to the point of just like, I don't know, like frying our brains with pleasure. And you know, you can only experience so much pleasure when you've just been doing meth for days and days, months and months. And you know, it gets to be to a point to where it's just like, all right, at this point, you know, in your body, if you haven't slept for days, you know, it's just so tired where it's like, all right, you know, you're basically just continuing to do it just for the plain ritual of, you know, you just got so used to just, even if it's not giving you any more pleasure, or, You know, it's the only thing it's doing is keeping you awake and giving you negative symptoms. You know, you just are so addicted that you just keep doing, you know, you just keep doing until you can't. Until you can't. And well, before that happened, you know, she said she needed to get down to Miami, so we go to Miami. You know, she slid me some cash, she slid me some, yeah. And so we get to this these apartments of some people she knew. We go up the steps, and on this stairwell, it's like, I don't know if this is Miami or close to Miami, but we went pretty far down. And yeah, so on this apartment complex, like, there's this stairwell leading up to the apartment we were gonna go up to, that's on the like 3rd floor, and they had this big, like, almost like cubed plan to where, you know, the fronts of the doors were like this, all facing each other, and there's like 3 floors, and each floor had about like 20 or so different apartments. It was a big place, and it had an open area in the middle or whatever. So from there, you can just, as you're heading towards the apartment, you can see it's the middle of the night, and there's so much crazy stuff going on in this place. You can see people squatted up here, squatted up there, doing God knows what. Probably getting up to the same thing that the people in the apartment that I went to when I met them were doing. You know, this was a very shady place. It was the middle of the night, and it seemed everybody here was awake. So we head up the stairwell, and there's like filth, needles, and you can tell there's baggies. It's a very dirty kind of place, you know, and this isn't even inside an apartment yet. When we get there, the door's already wide open. Oh yeah, and before we head to the floor where we're going, and the floor directly underneath, in the apartment, and the floor directly underneath, you know, because you have their like kind of like, there was a man outside. He looked a lot like a voodoo kind of witch doctor, and his whole getup. It's the middle of the night, and he has sunglasses on. Middle of the night. And he's just out there, you know, he's got his little, you know, animal skull totem looking things, you know, for his whatever. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that was a foreshadowing of what was about to happen in here. So we get there, and we're in there, and, you know, at first it just starts, oh, we're hanging out, you know, with people. At some point, you know, she's gone. I don't really have a job. I don't really have anywhere to get to. And at this point in life, I just did not care about a thing except getting high. So, all right, she's gone. You know, I have stuff. I have money. If I need more, I'm sure these people know where to get more. So I was just getting high until I needed more, and bought more, continued to get high at this place, because nobody was kicking me out. Everybody, I'm pretty sure, if you've been around, you know about a lot of these places where people do these drugs. There's like, anything goes. It's wide open, as long as you're buying, as long as you're contributing, you know, drug wise. You know, they don't even have to know. You could be the worst of the worst scum, and as long as they gain something from you or get high there, you know, it's a weird kind of dynamic in that world. Anyways, so this is where it gets really hazy, because at this point, after I'd lost my job, see, before I lost my job, I would at least stop smoking at some point, except actually like maybe 2 weeks before I had lost my job. And this is the reason why I lost my job. I stopping, you know, doing drugs at a certain time, doing meth at a certain time, because before I was just you know, doing it every weekend, and then it became every day. But I was doing it only in the beginning of the day, and then 2 weeks before I got fired, it became, I did it nonstop, and I wouldn't sleep, you know, except maybe on the weekends or whatever, you know, because I would crash, you know, or actually try to force myself to crash so I could recuperate. Because if I was just smoking throughout the week, I could stay awake and come to work and have my fun and do all that, you know what I mean? And it wouldn't really, I mean, obviously it would mess me up, but I was kind of able to, I don't know. Anyways, so by this time, I had already been like before the apartment, it had already been a couple of days of smoking nonstop and just doing increasingly heavier amounts and through increasingly extreme routes of administration. I don't even want to get into it because it's sick. And so we're here, she leaves, and I'm still here with these random people getting high. And by the time I'm here, I can't even tell the amount of time that's gone by, but it feels like, you know, from the amounts of times the sun has gone up and down, it feels like it's 2 or 3 days. And by this point, some other people come in. And this is the first time, if I can describe it, you know, like I can describe it now, but then, like, I'm sure throughout my life I've had demonic influence or oppression or vexation. But this is the first time I become extremely aware of the spiritual world. And I'm not talking about in being drawn to spiritual things. I'm talking about the spiritual world, the darkness of this world, you know, the wickedness of this world being made fully manifest into this reality. I mean, of course it's already in this reality, but I'm saying being physically, visibly manifested. And, you know, I'm not sure if everything that I saw and that I experienced is 100% accurate. I think it is. I think I was seeing it through the lens of someone that maybe people describe as psychotic, but I'm sure that a majority of what I was seeing was real. It was not a hallucination. It was just the fact that I had opened so many demonic doors that I was basically, you know, even though I'm sure because my mom prayed for me and because God has a plan for me, that He didn't allow me to perish in that moment. But I'm sure that I was handed over, you know, due to my wickedness, to experience, you know, as much torment as God will allow me to experience because of my wickedness, because of all the doors that I'd been opening, all the drugs I'd been doing. And so I saw just dark, shadowy figures begin to manifest everywhere. Because this was a bad area, they were everywhere. And before this happened, though, some random people had shown up that did not look like they belonged there. They did not fit the bill of the type that would be getting high, you know, or hanging out at a place like this. And it seems like they were speaking to each other in a kind of code, you know, and repeating things to each other and mocking and laughing at my predicament. And as I was starting to see these things manifest, it felt like my body was just moving on its own. My eyes would roll to the back of my head and come back. I would have brief glimpses of what I'd been doing, especially when I came back to. You know, I could see, but then I still felt like a puppet on a string wind-up toy kind of feeling, to where I was not in control at all, and that I was no longer in this reality. And I saw shape-shifting, you know, kinds of demonic manifestations, and I saw shadow people, you know, as far as the eye could see, just, and they were saying terrible things, mocking me, just as the same as these random people that had shown up had been mocking me. And despite the fact that I was getting angry, it was futile, because I would get angry, but it would just work to further confuse me, because, you know, I'd hear a voice from here, a voice from there, then the voice from these things that manifested that were mocking me, and like I would be like, my attention would be everywhere, and like I couldn't tell up from down, left from right, you know. And I was also experiencing these moments of just leaving my body and coming back, and I was writhing, like I was like, you know, like doing weird random movements, taking my clothes on and off, moving in a very serpent-like kind of pattern, collapsing in on myself and coming back and going all throughout the room, you know. And well, at some point, I gathered enough sense somehow to get out of there. But like that's not when the torment ended. That was actually just the beginning. So I'd actually driven down there, but my car didn't work. Like it worked fine. Granted, because of my use of drugs, like I wasn't maintaining it the way I should, but it ran all the way down there and now wasn't able to run. But I remember that there was a train station called the Tri-Rail that ran all the way from down near over there, like the Miami, Hollywood, Florida type of area, all the way down to West Palm Beach. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna hop on the Tri-Rail. I get over to the Tri-Rail station, and it just seems like there's these shape-shifting people that look very similar to these random people that had shown up to the apartment, and they're watching me from different areas in the train station. And random people are coming up to me trying to confuse me, trying to tell me to go on the opposite train from the train that I needed to get on, so that I'd be further lost. And there was somebody across the road that had been a very thin, sickly, weird looking guy, like thin to the point of being shocking. He pulled a pink umbrella out of a trash can, on the other side of the tracks, while looking in my direction, but with like a head down kind of, like grin type of thing going on. Put the pink umbrella, sat it on his lap, and started playing it like a piano. And then some of these random weird, shape-shifting people that look similar to the people that were at the place, started moving along in sync to what the dude was kind of pretending to play. And they were doing like street theater, and I could hear them making jokes, mocking and laughing, towards me, like just in an attempt to drive me insane. Now, this is all coming from the lens of someone who's, I'm pretty sure psychotic, yes, but I can't help but feel that what I was experiencing was actually happening, but it was happening on the spiritual level, and I was able to see it, if you get what I mean. So I get on the train eventually, and the whole time I'm on the train, these same people ride the train all the way down to where I end up, right? And the whole time they're watching me from a distance, moving around in weird ways and just saying very strange things. Sometimes they're talking in gibberish, or it sounds like they're talking in tongues. And then I feel an even heavier demonic presence, that even though I was seeing all these weird things, I could not see this presence, but it was very powerful, and its voice was very strong and fear-inducing. Like I felt like I could have a heart attack at any moment just from how much fear it caused me. And it said, "You're gonna die. I'm gonna kill you." Like it, and then I overheard a conversation, some people talking about, as soon as he gets off this train, just walk up behind him and end him. Just inducing all this fear in me. And I'm gonna skip forward a little bit. So for 5 months after this, it was still much of the same. It took me a long time to get off all this stuff. It took me getting evicted, having to sleep on my mom's couch, and relapsing from time to time, and realizing that I can't even dibble or dabble in this stuff anymore, because I immediately go back into a state of seeing all these evil things. Even when I stopped for months, or even sober, even way after, months after, years after, if I opened up demonic doorways through, say, dark spiritual practices, you know, after a long enough time, I would start to experience things very similar to this. So, skipping forward, right? I end up leaving Florida. I live over here for years. You know, it was just a state of just emptiness, just going through the motions, living life day by day, but still feeling empty, trying to find some happiness here and there. And then, I hadn't seen my mom or my brothers in years, and they come up here to visit, and it kind of opens my heart back again, man. Like, I hadn't realized how much I'd missed my mom and my brothers. And I don't know, even a little bit before that, I'd been kind of like inspired to just start going to the gym, because I was about to go down on vacation shortly after they had visited, to go visit them again in my hometown and maybe see some of my old friends. So, I wanted to kind of look good, this and that. Oh yeah, and a little bit before that, I got hit by a semi truck and came into an amount of money. So, all these strange occurrences, and I say strange as in like the getting hit by the truck, and a few other things that I'm about to talk about happen, and my family visiting, and it opens me up emotionally, because I just felt empty for such a long time. And I start just working out. I stumble across some videos on stuff like semen retention, and I start trying it out in conjunction with fasting. But I was not yet a believer, so I was just doing it for the sake of the supposed appearance benefits, and it worked. I mean, almost overnight, due to these two practices, man. A month or two later, before, by the time I go down to Florida, man, I'm looking right, I'm looking good, I'm feeling energy, I'm feeling mentally clear, so I go down there. My whole plan was supposedly to spend time with my family. I do anything but that. I go out every night, get drunk, go out with some girl that I'm, trying to hook up with. And at one point, I run into this one girl's ex-boyfriend, and he sees me out with this good-looking woman. And I guess he messages, one of his ex-girlfriends who I used to be close friends with back in those days, who actually helped me move my stuff when I was about to get evicted, helped me move my stuff to my mom's house, since I didn't have a license, I didn't have money, I didn't even have a vehicle, really. So she helped me move my stuff. And so he tells her, oh, he's looking good, this and that. And she gives me a text and says what's up, and then, we get to talking, and she turns out to have a ticket to a rave on the morning of my birthday. Well, I should say the night. It's technically morning, because it's from like 12 a.m. to like 5 a.m. or whatever, like some weird hours like that. And I get to her house before we leave out, and she has alcohol, weed, coke, shrooms, Molly. She's willing to give me all this stuff for free, and I'm on vacation. I haven't really let loose in a while. It's like, I'm going to a rave, let me get blasted on all this stuff, and I'll just be good again some other day, and we're there. Her so-called boyfriend is there while we're waiting on the couch for two other people to show up. And I noticed the whole time she just keeps like looking at me a certain way. You know what I mean? And then her friends show up. We all hop into, one car or one SUV, whatever. we head down to the club. I'm already, because I'd taken all this stuff before we even got in the car, I'm already overheated. I'm heating up the girl, one of her friends that she, had sitting next to me. I'm heating her up to the point where she's almost sweating. I'm starting to already sweat. I'm feeling on myself because I'm just feeling real good, but also super. It was a weird combination of drugs that just had me, moving in very strange ways, and overamped and oversharing, and being overtly sexual. And so Anna turns on the AC or whatever, and anyways, I start getting mad because I'm like, oh, I want it to be hot in here. I want it to be, I want everyone to sweat. Just being very suggestive, not just in that way, but in other ways. Anyways, we get down to the club, and I'm dancing in very strange ways because of all the drugs I'm on. She's dancing with me. Most people are avoiding me because I look insane, but she's not, and her so-called boyfriend isn't doing anything, and so I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm having a good time. She's attracted to me. And we get back in the car as we're heading back after the rave, right? And her female friend start speaking in code. And they, it turns out they wanted to do not just a threesome, but a foursome. So her female friend, me, and then the other dude, not Anna's boyfriend, but the other dude, had turned out not to be, a close, well, he was a friend, but not like, hooking up with the other girl that had been sitting next to me, but was instead gay or bi. So what they wanted to do was me get with her female friend, and this gay bi friend. But that, it doesn't end there. They wanted the boyfriend to watch, and they wanted to do this on camera. Now, mind you, at this point, I'd done all these drugs. I'm crashing, so I'm like there, just kind of like, and they're still wanting to go through with this. But at some point, they start realizing like, oh wait, he's too messed up and he's coming down. He might not be able to do this. So Anna's actually starting to feel disappointment, or like saying like, oh, can I get you something to eat? Can I, like trying to revive me or whatever. And this whole time I'm feeling like a really dark demonic energy, similar to what I had felt back in the days of when I would use crystal. And so when we got back there, they attempted to give me weed to, pacify me, because I was just being very like I don't even know how to mimic it again, but I was just moving a lot, but also like too lethargic to speak, if that makes sense. Like my body was there, but my mind wasn't. They couldn't comprehend me, so she tried to give me weed to smoke. It actually made me worse. And they were still yet like trying to seduce me. This is how little they cared about me. I don't know. I'm not a 10 out of 10 handsome guy for me to be getting, this kind of like, just pushy kind of approach. Like, oh, we have to have, like, this feels more like it was a spiritual attack and they're not aware of it, or maybe they are, but this feels like it was meant to be more of like a spiritual attack on me, because like in the Bible it says, you lay down with a harlot, you become one flesh. Maybe through their perversity, if I were to lay down with anyone there, with how perverse they are, they would probably pass on the, not just diseases, but the spiritual influence in them into me. And so at some point I say, hey, I need to use your bathroom, where is it? I managed to actually get that out of my mouth. I go over there, like I'm going towards it, but then instead I start walking out the door, and I heard behind me, oh no, he's leaving. Like the two girls come after me, and they're playing, nice or whatever, and they're saying like, oh, don't leave, like you can sleep it off on the couch, we'll talk, when you wake up, we'll hang out when you wake up. Saying, you're too messed up, you shouldn't drive, are you sure you want to drive? And I say, yeah, like I should get out of here, I'm not feeling good, I'm talking about once I leave, I start feeling like I'm being followed. And I know I'm not being followed by them, because even though I was messed up, I don't even remember how I got back to my mom's house. But I was looking back behind me the whole time, and there was no cars that were, from her house, the cars that were parked there from the other people, but I, regardless, still felt like I was being followed by something big. And when I say big, like multiple. And now I know this now to possibly be multiple demonic beings, multiple demons, multiple spirits, unclean spirits following me. And so I was looking everywhere, and all of a sudden I was overcome by this grief. I don't even know why, but it was just like this heaviness, depression, like feeling disgusting, not just because of what not just because of the situation I was about to get into, or they wanted me to get into, or whatever. Obviously one could say no, then I would be like, hell no. But like, just the fact that like, a so-called friend, like I know I'm a dude, right? But like, they didn't even care. Like, they didn't even care about my condition. I know I brought it upon myself by doing all those substances, but they were seeing how messed up I was, and the first concern was, oh, he's not going to be able to, do this thing, right? And by the way, I don't even know why they thought I would. Because initially, when her and her friend were speaking, and it sounded like it was going to be a threesome, I was like, yeah, cool, but I was already coming down. And then when they added all that extra stuff, definitely off the table. But still, like, no one there cared about what I was going through. And they just wanted to use me. And then I started remembering all the other times in my life that, due to the circle I was around and due to my actions, because I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of my actions were similar, like just wanting people, being around people for what I can gain from them, wanting to gain as much as possible from others while giving the least, wanting to get over on people. Even if I had morals that were instilled in me from when I was a young age, or, from the few times I went to church when I was young, I would just, at times, just slide them to the side, because I said, you know what, I could let this one or two morals go and gain, even if it's temporary, who's going to remember? And then as you continue to do that and become okay with that, the lines that you're willing to cross are further over here. Anyways, I just start having a rewind of a lot of things in my life, and I'm just overcome with not just the fear from feeling like I'm being followed by something I can't see, and that reminds me of those days back then when I encountered all those evil forces, but just crying. And I know this now was the voice of condemnation from the enemy, from Satan, but just reminding me of all the disgusting things I had seen, all the disgusting things I had done, all of my errors, all of my sins, and making me feel disgusted with myself and all the hopelessness I had experienced throughout life, and making me feel just gross. And it wasn't conviction, because conviction, it shows you the error of your ways, and you feel in yourself like you need to change. But no, this was condemnation This was extremely negative, intrusive thoughts of everything. And they just kept replaying and replaying. And I couldn't stop crying, man. I couldn't stop crying. Because it just kept telling me, you're a terrible person. You're always going to be a terrible person. You're never going to be good. You're never going to be good enough. You know? You're just meant to be like every other, you know, piece of, you know what, out here. You know? Like, oh, you think you deserve to be loved? You think you deserve this? And so, you know, I left Florida in an extremely negative and unhinged mind state, because I left shortly after this. I had failed to spend time with my family. I had experienced this demonic vexation, demonic attack, you know, fried my mind again, and was immediately back into that, you know, veil lifted, demonic manifesting kind of thing. Because, you know, even days after, it actually got worse after I came down off the drugs, and day after, because I still couldn't sleep and I was missing sleep, and I had to drive all the way from Florida back up to Tennessee. But then my brain, like, I had really done a number on my brain with all the drugs I did. So as I was driving, I was starting to see these shadowy kind of thought form, you know, morphing spiritual manifestations that were just dark, and you could just feel the evil coming off of me. And when I got back up here, I was filled with just so much weird, manic, and now looking back on it, like a possessed kind of energy, but it wasn't to the same level that I'd experienced years ago in that apartment. This was like to a level where, yes, I'm still in this world, but it's like possessed, as in I'm being pulled in certain directions. I'm being pulled here, I'm being pulled there, you know? And I come to know it now, like through hindsight, as the beginnings of a Kundalini awakening, a false light, a counterfeit Holy Spirit. This was the beginning of these spirits trying to indoctrinate me and push me in directions, because I'd given access to them through my actions. You know, they were now in my body, or now in my mind, or influencing me in some way, in a very strong way, you know. And I started getting people in this spiritualist kind of community, like, calling downloads, which are a counterfeit of the revelations and the insight and discernment that you get from reading the Word of God, hearing God's will, and the things He reveals to you, shows you. This is an inversion of it, right? I start experiencing this. I start getting downloads of occultic knowledge that I had never read of, new agey concepts, you know, make sense to me and are easy for me to understand. And, you know, I start getting this notion that that thing I had done before my vacation down there, I should continue it, and I should continue to, you know, retain semen. But at the same time, you know, it started leading my mind towards learning about tantric sexuality, solo tantra, and sex magic rituals. I start doing these things while also retaining, if you can believe that. And what it starts doing is unlocking even, but before this happened, so as the awakening was happening, I wasn't able to eat, I wasn't able to sleep. I had so much manic energy, you know, I was wound tight and just going here and there. And like, I would have these I won't call them divine appointments, they were demonic appointments with people who were of this, false spirituality kind of persuasion, who were in this kind of occultic circle, who were into witchcraft, who were into occultism, who were into manifesting things, opening your third eye, some were downright satanic. And so I before all this, I start feeling like a heat in my spine too, like ascending from my spine, going up my body, spreading out. This heat just almost unbearable. And it's accompanied with this feeling of you gotta go, go here, go there, do this, do that, learn this, practice that. So let's fast forward a little bit because getting lost. But I'm learning all these things. I run into this woman who is older than me, a yoga instructor, and come to find out later, she's what she calls a white witch. She made up a new name for herself that wasn't her birth name, and ran her own stuff and barely really had to work and just was doing her spiritual practices, and had told me that she had a dark initiation, and that that the people that she had met along that way asked her what she needed to do the work, and she said what she needed, and she got it not that much later, not just the money but the house. And that her plan was to bring as many people into what she was doing before the world burned, because in the counterfeit interpretation, what's going to happen, this earth is going to burn, but all the enlightened people will ascend or whatever. I didn't really believe this, but the thing that hooked me in was, one, she had looks. Two, she was older, so in my carnal mind I'm like, oh, she's more experienced. She did yoga, so she's flexible. She's in shape, she's this, she's that. She has money, so she's not going to need anything from me. And she also was interested in tantric things and sex magic rituals, which I had already been practicing beforehand, but now I had someone to practice them with and double the results. And I'd been reading up on things that had to do with manifestation, experimenting with that and succeeding. I started getting these visualizations of what was going to happen, a day from now, a week from now, and they would happen. So I started feeling like I was psychic. And now I know that it's deceptive spirits that make you feel that way. All right? And anyways, so we were doing these things, and it starts out all right. We're getting to know each other. We've now at this point we've dated or whatever for a month or so. And it's just like getting darker and darker. We're getting into deeper and deeper strange spiritual practices. And I'm just along for the ride, because I'm like, this woman, she barely has to work, and she owns all this property and all this stuff, and she says she's just manifesting it. So even if the things are getting dark and her personality doesn't really jive with mine, I'm gonna learn what I know from her and take what I know, and then once I know enough, leave. Do it for myself. So, but before I can supposedly, and this is a blessing, this is how God blesses you. You don't get everything that you thought that you wanted, but you get what you needed. You get things cut short. You get things happen that push you to act. She started getting a very, very demeaning, demanding, and controlling kind of tone towards me as time progressed. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not even going to deal with this. Like, I have enough self-respect. Like, I don't need this. I don't need you. So I leave without a word. And she basically sends me text messages that seem like threats. 1 week later, I have a random car accident. 1 week after, I just leave. And then later on, I end up going to this festival. And as I'm getting really high on mushrooms, I start getting demonically attacked again. I think you're noticing a theme here. Drugs, sex, and opening doors. Opening doors I shouldn't open. While around people practicing dark spirituality, false spirituality, occultic type of things. And so I go to this festival, and I didn't even go for the music. Something had compelled me to go here. I didn't even like the music. I don't even like EDM or, trap, whatever you call that kind of music that they play, where it's like, at these music rave type festivals. I go to this festival called the Astral Project. If you know anything about astral projection, it's a demonic practice. I take mushrooms here. And before I show up, by the way, I run into a doppelganger 2 days before, a doppelganger of a woman that I used to know in Florida. And I run into this same doppelganger of this girl I used to know in Florida. I run into her at the music festival, which was another very strange thing that should have, from the beginning, told me, hey, get out of here, because there's some weird, strange, demonic stuff going on here. But I didn't take heed, and I did mushrooms here. I hated the music, but I wanted to have a spiritual experience, as I thought, with large groups of people, because I was thinking that everybody there was going to be on the same page. And, in some ways I bought into, these people, they might be very strange, just like myself, and inclined to certain spiritual practices that I've been practicing. Nope. All of them were just as self-centered, if not worse, than myself. Just as arrogant spiritually, just as, they had just as I had a thin facade of positivity over a lot of negative, impulsive kind of traits, And well, as I was tripping out, I started experiencing the same kind of feelings from back in the meth days. The mocking voices, the feeling of an extremely dark presence, even seeing some manifest here and there at this place. And my eyes are transfixed on the moon the whole night. Not the whole night, but like a majority of the night. Like after sun had set, we were on the main stage. I was looking up at the moon long enough for it to go from, say, all the way like over here to the center of the sky. So I don't know how many hours that is, but it went and the whole time I was just staring at the moon. People were coming up to me trying to talk to me from time to time. I'd take my focus away, but I would just be staring at the moon. And weird things, like once it got to the middle and the headliner for the night was on stage. Once it got to the middle, this moon, which was a full moon that night, and it just seemed so much closer than usual. Like it was just so big and bright. And most of the night had just been a clear sky. They had timed the festival to be where there was going to be no rain. And all of a sudden, these storm clouds start forming around the moon. And there's wind blowing and rain going. And, people are getting calls saying there's 100% chance of rain. People are freaking out, cussing because, the show's going to be effing ruined. And there's tents flying, in other parts of the camp, except for the main stage. And these clouds are circling around a full moon like this, like in a very strange supernatural kind of way, and the moon is open for one to see, and it's in the middle of the sky. So all this stuff is going on at the same time, and something told me, do not take your eyes off that moon and keep looking up. And on the moon, I saw, created with the rays of light, a cross. I thought, no, that can't be. That can't be. Like this whole spiritual walk, the thing that's been protecting me from death, it can't be that. It cannot. And you know why I kept thinking that? Because I didn't want to admit that all the people who tried to show me the truth were right. All the people I had mocked, all the people I said, you're foolish for believing that they were right and I was wrong. I didn't want to admit. And somebody had come down to sit next to me because they'd seen just the whole night I was just behaving very strangely. I would say no stranger than other people there, because people there were having relations in public, doing all types of drugs, having all types of messed up, wicked conversations. But definitely in, just watching me, I was very strange, right? So someone comes sit next to me and, starts talking to me. I'm starting to come down. And we start talking about different things and different deities and different spiritual concepts, just because I'm just feeling in like a kind of mood to talk about those things, and so is this person. And then we get to a conversation about Jesus. And even though the brother was misguided about calling Jesus as something that, one can become through reaching the Christ consciousness, which is a deception. You can have Christ in your life, you can have the Holy Spirit within you, you can have, you can, but there's no such thing as the Christ consciousness. It's something that is like, you become Christ, as they like to believe. But anyways, even though the brother was misguided, there was someone from somewhere in the camp, and it was dark, because by this point when we had started talking, the music had cut off and they'd gone to another smaller stage to continue the show up until morning, right? So this was like the aftermath, where all that stopped, and there was someone from down there that screamed out, "Jesus, what kind of drugs are you on?" And then there was other people around him that started laughing in a very mocking kind of way, like they weren't joking. We were in on the joke. We were being joked about. And I'm really not my mind is just so fried. Like when I get and do a lot of drugs, even if I feel anger or whatever, it's just like, you know what, man? Like I just feel so off center, man. I'm not even gonna react, bro. Like I'm just gonna chill here and anyways, in my mind, a seed is planted where it's like, you can talk about anything. Everything is permissible with these kinds of people. Every deity, everything. But you speak about Christ to them or to me, and he's mocked, ridiculed. I get angry. They seem to be mocking. Why? Like it just plants a seed, like, why? Wait. Why do I have this hatred? Why, whenever my mom would share the word of God or my uncle would try to, why would I react with such venom? What's wrong with me? These are people who love me. Why? And now why, even though, why when we were talking about Jesus just now, why are these supposed love and light kind of people? Why are they just behaving the way they're behaving? It doesn't make sense. And shortly after that happened, the dude who was sitting next to me started backpedaling, and said, "Oh, but you know that Jesus and the things they experience is all like a result of them eating. You know how they say they ate the bread, and you know there was some rye that grew on that bread. So Jesus and the disciples pretty much had the first acid trip as a group, and it created a religion and blah blah blah, and that's why they talk about eternity and a kingdom that you cannot see, because they were pretty much having an acid trip." So I'm thinking, wait, why did this guy backpedal, and why is he, even as a non-believer, I can see this a very ridiculous take on Jesus. And all these things stuck in my mind, man. And you know, I thought about all the times that I'd been rude to the people that love me and were sharing the gospel with me and the things of God with me, not to tell me that I was a bad person, even though in my mind that's what it sounded like, that's what it came off like. You know, as a non-believer, you're like, oh, how dare this person judge me and tell me what I ought to believe, and that I'm going to hell if I don't. Like, they wouldn't tell me I'm going to hell, but that's how I would interpret it. And I started thinking about all the times I'd been rude to my mother and my uncle and the people that were actually caring about me. Meanwhile, being cool with the people who we just led each other to destruction just because it was, as I thought at those times, a good time. I thought about how my mother had given me a Bible before I left Florida and moved up here to Tennessee. She'd given me a Bible to read. And instead of reading it, I used the pages as a smoking paper type of thing. Like, as in, like, you know, when I would run out of joint papers, or I couldn't find my bubbler, you know, I would sometimes get papers out of the Bible, rip them up and smoke. You know, or if I was too lazy to go to the store even, I would do that. So something that my mother had given me with the intentions to edify me, to change my life, because, you know, coming to God is life-changing. Instead of me reading it and honoring what she gave me, I was destroying it. And not just in the sense of the Bible, but my whole life. I'd been destroying it. You know? And so I started thinking, all this so-called spirituality type of stuff, all these thrills, all this other stuff, and I've had quick money, and I've had all types of pleasures. As Ecclesiastes, I'm gonna read real quick. Let me find it. Give me one moment. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it's over here. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor, which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to the place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers came, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, See, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. I have seen all the works. So I'm skipping to Ecclesiastes 1:14. It says, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. Okay, let me skip to Ecclesiastes 2:3. There we go. No. Ecclesiastes 2. I'm just going to start on Ecclesiastes 2 and see how far I get. So, I said in mine heart, Go to now. I will prove thee with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. And behold, this is also vanity. I said of laughter, It is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see that, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kind of fruits. I made me pools of water, to water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. I get me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And this was my portion of all my labor, that I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. So yeah, that's basically what I had experienced. Aside from the demonic stuff, I'd experienced, maybe not all the pleasures of the world, but many, and over and over. And it did nothing but vex my spirit. I thought of that. And once I bought a Bible again, maybe 2 weeks after this festival, right? I bought a Bible again. And I had fasted and I had prayed. And as I was reading the Bible, I found in it so much wisdom, so many answers to why I was messing up. And I felt so much conviction. Like the thing that says, honor thy mother and thy father. And if I remember correctly, so your days might be long in the land of your Lord. I might be wrong on exactly what I said, but yeah. By luck, I wasn't dead, but had I continued, or maybe had my mom not prayed, or maybe if God's plan for me wasn't that I would be his, I would probably have been fully given over and destroyed. I have no doubt about it. Either insane or in prison, because I also had luck with that, never getting caught up for any of the stupid things I did. But being allowed to suffer the consequences within myself, though. I didn't escape all consequences. I still had to deal with a lot of the repercussions. But I didn't have to go to prison. And I didn't have to die. And what followed, after I prayed, after I fasted, after I started reading the Bible, was a period of peace and rest in my soul that only our Savior, Jesus Christ, can provide. I didn't hunger. I didn't thirst for any of the things of this world. In that moment, I thought within myself, I could drop dead right now. And I know where I'll go. And I know that I'll be okay. Because I had been praying and seeking God's face and telling him, Lord, I want to be one of yours. You are the Lord, and I accept you as my Savior. And please take me. Please guide me. And many other things. I didn't yet know how to pray properly. I didn't even know the Lord's Prayer. I didn't know anything. I just said the things that I wanted to happen. I wanted to be freed from all these things. And God was good. He did exactly that. And now I will admit that I backslid a few times after coming to God. But each time I learned more. I fell, but I got back up. So if you fall, get back up and repent and change your ways. But once you come to God, once you come to Christ, He will keep you. Now, obviously, one shouldn't abuse grace. One should not abuse grace. But our God is a merciful God, is a just God, is a fair God. And He will chasten you from time to time. If you misbehave, like how a father should chasten his children. But it's not in a violent way. it's not in a forceful way. See, when you're involved with the enemy, his ways are forceful. God gave us free will. God gave us the option to choose to follow him. And should you choose to follow him, you will find yourself freed from the weight of your sins, from the guilt, from the spiritual death, from the second death, from the eternal lake of fire. He sent down his Son, the perfect sacrifice, so that you may be saved. And none of us deserve it. I definitely didn't. In fact, I hated God. I had hatred for him. Literal hatred. Anytime God or Jesus or anything holy would be mentioned, within me these feelings of rage would stir up for no reason. Yet I was suffering inside. And there was a physician that could have cured me long ago. But you know what? God, he makes all evil things work together for good. And I do not feel like, oh, I wish he would have got me sooner. I wish he would have revealed himself sooner. No. All the things that you went through, all the evil you did before you came to God, or before you come to God and repent, they can serve as a testimony. They can serve as a way for you to reach a common ground with a person that just feels so irredeemable, feels so lost, so broken, like no one can understand them. Like Christians are just these holy people that will never understand them. And that walking with Christ is not for them. But no. Christ came to die for all of us. But he came to die for the sinner. He came to rescue the sinner, the prostitute, the adulterer. He had converted Paul, who was a Christian killer. He had a tax collector, who were some of the most hated people in that time, as one of his disciples. You know, and if you look at all the greats of the Bible, they had their problems, man. Murderers, cheaters, liars. But when God used them and they humbled themselves before God and became righteous in his sight and did his will, they accomplished great things. See, not only are we not our own, but we are instruments to be used by God, to do good unto others, to lead others to the light, to spread the gospel. And I just wanted to say that. This is my testimony. I'm not a perfect person. Times I fall short. But God has freed me from just this feeling of, where am I going to go when I die? You know, do I matter? Because secular society will tell you, you are just a small speck in an infinite universe and you do not matter. You die, become dust, and it just continues and continues until the end of time, if time even ends. God says otherwise. He says, you were created in my image. You matter. I want to commune with you. All other beliefs, the gods are just too good. And they can only love you if you give to them. God said, love me and accept me, and I will accept you. So with that, that's my testimony. I know a lot of the beginning was a lot of negativity, and I apologize, but I had to put it in there. And I might have been a bit scatterbrained, you know, I'm still working on that, but That's my testimony. And let me know what you guys think. Have a blessed day. Amen.